All right. Hope everybody's having a great time down at State this weekend for State boys basketball. And what you are missing in class on Friday, we are going to be going through the blood typing. Um, for human blood groups, we look at the red blood cells to tell what type of blood you have. And on the red blood cells are antigens. Antigens are going to be specific structures that stick off the surface of the red blood cells. If you remember back to when we talked about cells before, we talked about how there's proteins with sugars that stick off the surface, and those sugars are used for identification. And that's what these antigens are. So depending on your blood type, you will have certain antigens on your red blood cells. However, if you get a blood transfusion, you could receive antigens from another person that might be considered foreign. So in that case, if they are considered foreign, then your body would attack them. Okay, so these antigens that we're talking about are unique to you. It is inherited genetically from your parents. However, your unique antigens might be different from what your parents have. These antigens, we often will use another word to refer to them, and that's agglutinogens. And when I always try to remember what agglutinogen means, I just look at the ending for antigens, and I just see the G-E-N-S, and I remember that's the same as an antigen. Okay, so depending on whether you have these antigens or don't have these antigens tells you your blood groups. All right, so the antigens that are possible on your red blood cells, the primary ones, is A, B, or there's one we'll talk about later that's called RH. And RH gives you the plus or minus. So if you have RH, you're positive. If you don't have RH, you're negative. Now this term agglutination just refers to clotting. So depending on the antigens you have on your red blood cells, it could be used for a clotting reaction. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. All right, so in reality, there's actually about 30 different antigens that stick off of our red blood cells. But again, the ones we focus on are the A and the B, which are part of what we call the ABO system. And we also focus on RH because those are the ones that if you receive the wrong type of blood, your body will attack vigorously. A lot of the other types, there's a few listed down here, are ones that won't cause a big transfusion reaction. So it could be used for legal purposes in court trials where they do a blood analysis. However, it's not so important to test for those when donating blood because they will not cause difficulty with blood transfusions. Okay, so we said the ABO group is the main antigens we look at for our blood, and there's two antigens, A and B. Okay, so these two antigens are going to tell us our primary blood type depending on what we have on our red blood cells. So for example, let's show you how this works. One blood type you can have is A blood. So if you have A blood, you have the A antigen. If you have B blood, you have only the B antigen. So that means you have that on your red blood cell. Okay, the other types, if you have type AB blood, which is actually the rarest type, then you would have both A and B on your red blood cell. So you'd have both antigens. And then finally, the fourth type, which is actually the most common, is type O blood. And if you have type O blood, that means you have no antigens. Okay, so that's one half of the puzzle. But the other piece we need to look at are structures called antibodies. Antibodies are chemicals made by our white blood cells that are going to attack foreign antigens. Okay, so it's possible that in your blood you may produce anti-A antibodies. You will make these anti-A if you don't have an A on your red blood cell. Okay, and you'll produce anti-B if you don't have a B antigen on your red blood cell. So that means to you, that is a foreign antigen, so you would attack it. All right, so for example, if I go back to my A blood type, A has an A antigen, so it would produce anti-B antibodies. So if you have type A blood and you received a blood that had type B on it, or a B antigen, you would attack it. Okay, so if you have type B blood, you would have the B antigen and you would produce anti-A antibodies. Okay, and then if you have type AB blood, you would produce no antibodies. And that would mean that type AB blood is the universal recipient, because it's not going to attack A, it's not going to attack B, it's not going to attack AB, and it's not going to attack O. And then finally, type O blood produces anti-A and it produces anti-B. So it will attack all of the other types of blood. So if you have type O blood, you can only receive type O blood. One thing about this, however, is if you have type O blood, you are considered the universal donor because it has no antigens. So if I take type O blood and I give it to AB, it's not going to get attacked because there's no antibodies and no antigens. If I take type O blood and I put it in with A, it's not going to attack because A only attacks if there's a B present. And if I take O blood and put it in with type B, again it will not be attacked. And so, because there's no A's present, no A antigens. Okay, when I say attacking, what I means is it can cause a hemolytic reaction. So if you have the wrong antibodies and agglutinogens mixing, so if an anti-A comes in contact with blood that has an A antigen, it'll cause a hemolytic or clotting reaction. So what will happen is the antibodies will stick to the red blood cells, and then when it sticks to the red blood cells, it will cause them to clump together, and the blood will not flow very well. It may clog some of your blood vessels, and it can be a fatal reaction. Okay, so here's a chart from your textbook showing the different types of blood with the ABO groups. And again, this isn't taking into account the plus and the minus. And it also talks about how common the different blood types are. So this is a chart that actually would be probably pretty helpful for filling out the final chart that I handed out on Thursday. The most common group, again, is type O. And then it goes to type A, type B, and type AB. So AB is the rarest. All right, this picture shows what's on the red blood cells. So if you have type AB, you have an A antigen right here, and you also have a B antigen. So you could, when you fill out the chart, on the first column, I'm looking for pictures like this, where you just draw a red blood cell and label what's on the top, or label what antigens are on it. Okay, so if I have type B blood, I'm going to have just B antigens. All right, and then also on the chart, you have to predict what antibodies it will produce. So if I have type AB blood, I'm not going to produce any antibodies. So I'm not going to attack anything. So I can get any blood type. If I have type B blood, you can see they're going to produce anti-A antibodies. So I can only get stuff that does not have an A on it. So I can receive a B blood. You can always receive your own type. And I can receive O blood. But I cannot get A, and I cannot get AB. Okay.